And again, I keep coming back to this, and the context here is that Don Lemon has been an enemy of the MAGA movement for quite some time. He's disliked by the Trump administration. That doesn't matter. What matters here is he was being a journalist who was doing his job and has now been arrested for doing his job.
The media is in complete meltdown mode right now. They're acting as if President Trump is cracking down on journalists everywhere, and this is an attack on freedom of the press. Yes, we have the First Amendment, but guess what? The First Amendment protects for a free press. It doesn't mean that journalists can commit crimes. And think of it this way. We now know that several of these protesters, these rioters that invaded this St. Paul church, they've been charged and accused of violating the FACE Act, the KKK Act. And so they've been accused of crimes. We know that Don Lemon is not from Minneapolis or St. Paul. He had to cross state lines. He had to fly into the state to cover this event. Does that not on its surface at least suggest some level of conspiracy, some level of organization? Let's not forget the fact that before these protesters burst into the church, that Don Lemon was filming them beforehand, and not only did he kiss the organizer of the protest, but he, when referring to the group of agitators, used the word "we." That's right, the royal we, as if he's part of the group. Take a look at this.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Okay.
How are you?
Good
to see you. We're on. We're not saying what it is, what's going on, but thank you. Tell us why you're doing this.
Yeah, if you know that a group is about to break the law, if you know the group is about to do something illegal, and you're not reporting it to the authorities, I think that you share some culpability with that. And this argument that Don Lemon had a right to be in that church just because he's a so-called journalist, that on its surface doesn't even pass the smell test. Again, just because you're a journalist, it doesn't mean that you can trespass. Think of it this way. As Americans, we should have access to the president. We should have a media that reports on the president. But could Don Lemon, could any journalist walk up into the White House and just walk into the Oval Office? No, they would be charged with trespassing. Even if they said, no, I just want to ask a few questions. I just want to cover what's going on. I want to see what the president... No, you can't do that. And so this idea that just because we have the First Amendment, it means that journalists can do whatever they want, that is not true. Now, it's also important to consider the profound effect that this had on families and worshipers at that church. In retrospect, it's easy to look at what happened and say, well, there was no harm. It's not as if anyone was injured or they attacked anyone. But in the moment, no one knew that. Investigative journalist Matt Finn did an excellent summary of the affidavits and legal documents when the church protesters were originally arrested, and it was so much worse than we thought. Victim 4 informed to agents that members of their parish attempted to retrieve their children from the Sunday school areas, the childcare areas that were downstairs, but the protesters, the agitators, were blocking the stairs and parents couldn't get to their children. On top of that, one victim said that they were afraid that the agitators had guns, that maybe they were using their coats to hide everything, and so they really had no idea what was going on. And when you think about it from the perspective of the children who don't understand the slogans that have been associated with some of these protests. Imagine you're that little boy, right? The boy that went viral who was crying and his father was comforting him. He doesn't know the meaning behind the chant, hands up, don't shoot. You're that age and you hear a huge group of people screaming, hands up. I mean, you're going to be terrified. And then obviously in school these days, they have to worry about mass shootings. And so you're hearing hands up, don't shoot. These words go together and you have no idea what's going on. So truly, if you think about this from their perspective, they had no idea what was going to happen. We're lucky that it wasn't worse. And so this really was an issue of security for the church. When we talk about security, people usually think about borders or national defense, but personal security matters too. And most of us have way more information about ourselves online than we realize. That really hit home after I got a phishing email that looked exactly like it was from my bank. Same logo, same language, but it used my real address. That's when I realized my data was already out there. So I decided to wipe myself from the internet with Incogni. They don't just remove your info from data brokers, they go after any site that has your data. My dashboard shows 786 removal requests, 734 already completed, saving me 550 hours and 30 minutes of work. That beats spending months or years cleaning up financial and reputational damage from identity theft. And with Incogni's custom removal feature on the Unlimited and Family Unlimited plans, you can flag any site showing your info, and one of their privacy agents personally takes care of it. because once your data is out there, it's not harmless. It's fuel for scams, identity theft, and worse. Go to incogni.com/stateofdaniel and use StateOfDaniel for 60% off. Again, incogni.com/stateofdaniel, code StateOfDaniel. Remove yourself from the internet before someone else uses your data against you. And of course, it's not just MS Now or CNN who are freaking out about this. Democrats everywhere are just losing their minds. One of the greatest examples is actually George Conway, who is Kellyanne Conway's former husband, her ex-husband now, and boy, oh boy, is he looking rough. I almost thought he was Elena Kagan for a second.
The arrest of Don Lemon is just another example of how the Trump administration is trying to turn the United States of America into a police state. It is the hallmark of authoritarianism for the government to try to suppress reporting about its corruption, reporting about its illegalities. Don Lemon's First Amendment rights, the press's First Amendment rights are your rights. They are our rights to be informed, and they stand and fall with our rights to speak out, to criticize the government and change the government. Please stand up for Don Lemon, and please speak out as vigorously as you can to your neighbors, to your friends on social media. Stand up for your First Amendment rights and stand up for democracy. Thank you.
What he says doesn't even make sense, because George Conway is claiming that Don Lemon was arrested for trying to investigate and expose what the Trump administration is doing. But he wasn't doing that. That's not why they arrested him. He was arrested because of his participation in this raid of the church. Whether or not he conspired, crossed state lines, what level of planning he had with the organizers, I don't know, and that will all be proven as this case continues to move forward. But that's why he was arrested. It has nothing to do with his reporting. It has nothing to do with his criticisms of the government. I mean, heck, how long has the media... President Trump has now been in the public eye for, 11 years? I mean, obviously he's been in the public eye for much longer, but politically speaking, think of all the hundreds, if not thousands of journalists who have negatively covered him. Are they all behind jails? Are they all in gulags? Have they all been denaturalized and deported? No. And so for George Conway and other Democrats to be spreading this, no, what they are doing is they're just continuing to spread fear into their base. And this is what leads, unfortunately, to the tragedies of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. I think that those two individuals are the victims of left-wing brainwashing. If it weren't for the left-wing brainwashing them into thinking that they need to stand up and fight for America, perhaps they'd still be alive today. So shame on George Conway and others who are echoing that sentiment. It goes far beyond George Conway. Even Don Lemon's own lawyer is attempting to put fear into the Democrat base, and unfortunately for her, her statement this morning has already aged just poorly. She writes, instead of investigating the federal agents who killed 2 peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest, and that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. And she spends the rest of the statement talking about the First Amendment. But like I said earlier in the video, the First Amendment gives you freedom of the press. It does not mean that journalists are free to break the law, free to conspire, free to trespass, and any other wrongdoings. But even though she released that statement this morning, it's aged like milk. It's aged like George Conway. Because guess what? The Justice Department announced, according to Fox News, DOJ opened civil rights investigation into Minnesota death of Alex Preddy. So there you go. The DOJ, guess what? Abby Lowell, they are investigating it. Turns out the federal government is very capable of walking, chewing gum, patting their head, and patting their stomach at the same time. Just because you can't juggle multiple nuanced thoughts, it doesn't mean that the federal government can't juggle multiple tasks at the same time. By the way, we also know that this isn't just vengeance or the Justice Department bending to President Trump's will. We actually have a statement from White House Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair, who writes, any news outlet failing to make clear in their headline that Don Lemon was indicted by a federal grand jury is intentionally misleading the public. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So the fact that that came from the Deputy Chief of Staff tells me that probably was their announcement. And this also means, A federal grand jury, right? It's a group of 16 to 23 people. So a jury of his peers took a look at the evidence and they said, hey, there is enough here to move forward. It's not as if this was a single judge, such as the magistrate judge who struck down the pursuits last week. This is a group of people who took a look at all of the evidence and they said, no, the Justice Department has every single right to move forward. And they did. So it's not as if President Trump is subverting the rule of law. It's not as if he's trying to find loopholes. Everything here is above the surface, going by the rule book. How can you say he's undermining our republic when he's actually working within the framework of our republic? And one of the telltale signs of this was when Todd Blanche was asked about this during a DOJ presser. They asked him to give his response to Don Lemon's arrest, and he was very level-headed, and he didn't give the mainstream media what they wanted.
Do you have a reaction to the arrest of Don Lemon overnight?
Do you have a reaction to what?
To Don Lemon's arrest overnight?
Do I have a reaction to it? I don't know what that means. What are you looking for me to do? Jump up and down? No, I don't have a reaction to it. I don't know that the charges are unsealed yet. So I can't. I'm not going to comment on that.
So yeah, it's not as if he's giddy or celebrating. He's just following the rule of law, and I thought that was extremely, extremely professional. Now, for all the Democrats, for all those in the media who were crying as if this is some unforeseen and unprecedented breach, no, this has actually happened multiple times before. But it's always been conservative reporters who have been arrested and targeted. But before I get into that, I would like to thank the members of today's Governor's Club. They are Super Roamer, Throwback Sports Video, and Jason Odell. These are people who give tips and super thanks to the channel. I'm so glad that you're here and that you enjoy. But what about this? This is Steve Baker from The Blaze. Where is the outrage over Steve Baker's prosecution? So he was on the ground during January 6th. He wasn't participating in the riots. He didn't break into the Capitol. He didn't attack any police officers or anything like that. No, he was on the ground as a journalist and he was just reporting on what was going on. And he ended up getting arrested, charged, and prosecuted. Where was the outrage over that? What about his First Amendment rights? What about James O'Keefe, who was arrested in 2010? Reports, filmmaker who did Acorn videos, arrested, wiretap plot alleged. And it's not just those two. You can go down the list. There have been numerous conservative reporters who have been targeted, prosecuted, and the left wants to act as if this is unprecedented, as if this has never happened before. No, that's just more fear-mongering. That's just more brainwashing because they want the radicals out there to continue to rise up, to continue to fight against the federal government, to make life and governing difficult for this administration. So with all of that being said, shame on them and shame on Chuck Schumer, one of the top Democrat Party leaders right now, for saying this.
On another issue, last night, federal agents arrested journalist Don Lemon in Los Angeles after he recently covered protest activities in Minnesota. Once again, the administration is behaving no differently from police states and authoritarian regimes across history. They've arrested a journalist for the crime of doing his job. And let's be very clear, this arrest is not just about one journalist in one incident. The arrest is a dark message to journalists everywhere. If you dare criticize this administration, watch your back. That's not a democracy. That's a police state. And that is pure authoritarian bile. Democracy will suffer if the government chokes our civil liberties. Under this administration, the Department of Justice has all too often become the Department of Vengeance. Don Lemon should be released at once and the frivolous charges against him dropped.
If you just listen to his speech, it has nothing to do with his age. He just sounds so low energy, and I believe it's because he doesn't actually believe what he's saying. Someone probably just wrote that script, and he's reading it because he has to. He has to hit all these talking points. But if you really believe that President Trump is an up-and-coming, up-and-rising dictator, this is authoritarianism, wouldn't you be a little more panicked, a little more passionate? And for, again, he's acting as if it's just because Don Lemon criticized President Trump. No, that's not what Don Lemon did at the church. Don Lemon has been very critical of President Trump, not just over the last year, but ever since 2015, 2016. Why wasn't he arrested over the last decade? Instead, it was when he went with these protesters, who, by the way, they were also charged, into this church. So it's just complete dishonesty. I think Chuck Schumer knows he's being dishonest, but I don't know if he's being paid or or if he just feels controlled by the radical part of the base. But we need Democrats to stand up and speak out and say, hey, no, this has happened on both sides. You're going to be held accountable if you break the law. And guess what? If you trespass, if you prevent people from worshiping, if you conspire, if there are so many things here. And it's not that difficult, to be honest. Last but not least, Don Lemon FAFO'd, obviously, and he also proved to us that you should be careful for what you wish for. It's similar to what happened with William Kelly, right? He's that woke farmer, and he said, come and get me, Pam Bondi. Well, those were his famous last words, and apparently these are Don Lemon's famous last words.
Look, I stand proud and I stand tall. This is not a victory lap for me because it's not over. They're going to try again, and they're going to try again. And guess what? Here I am. Keep trying. That's not going to stop me from being a journalist. You're not going to diminish my voice. Go ahead, make me into the new Jimmy Kimmel if you want. Just do it. Because I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to believe the same things, whether you want to, whatever. Now, let me just tell you something else before I get to my guests. None of this is about justice. This is about power, and it's about people who are incompetent.
Talk about incompetent. The reason you compared yourself to Jimmy Kimmel is because even though Jimmy Kimmel is diminished, at least he has an audience. At least he's still on prime time. Meanwhile, who's your audience, Don Lemon? Who listens to you? I'm pretty sure everyone who reacts to you on YouTube and Instagram and X has an actually larger audience than you do. Just saying. As always, though, all of this is just my analysis and commentary. That is what's happening in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So what do you think? Were you surprised that this actually happened, especially since the magistrate judge blocked the DOJ from pursuing Don Lemon last week? Or were you expecting that this was going to happen all along? Did you believe Harmeet Dillon when she said, no, we're going to go after him and we're going to explore other avenues no matter what? So yeah, let me know. Were you surprised, or were you expecting this the entire time and it was just a matter of when and not if? I mixed that around. Oh boy, it's been a long day. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to leave me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask for, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.